the Deputy Leader of the Labour Party. Good morning, Mr. Rayner.
Good morning.
If we can get past yesterday's business for the moment, did Keir Starmer talk to you about his proposed rule changes before the conference?
Of course, yeah, and he spoke to the trade unions and many others about the proposals that he felt that we needed to have a conversation about, and that's normal in conference period. We're not happy unless we're talking about a rule amendment, a reference back or a compensating meeting. That's just the normal hustle and tussle of what we do at conference. So yeah, you know, he wanted that consultation, he wanted that discussion. We had our NEC, which passed and approved some proposals that are going to go to conference floor, and that's how we do things in the Labour Party.
So another Labour Party tradition, the two of you clearly didn't disagree because you put forward a separate amendment to his proposal at the NEC. Well,
I'm not going to discuss what happened at the private meeting of the NEC.
But that is the case.
But one of the things that I'm concerned of, and I always have been, and I've stood on the platform, is that we are able to diversify our candidates and the way in which we, you know, are able to, choose people as councillors, as mayors, as leaders, and as myself as deputy leader. You know, I wanted to make sure that, for example, we're able to have more women on the ballot and that we're able to have more black, Asian and minority ethnic candidates on the ballot. So my concerns around that is to make sure that we don't inadvertently create a problem for ourselves when we actually want to have a broad base of candidates on that ballot so that people can have...
But if the two of you were talking about it so amicably, that means he came into this conference basically ignoring what you wanted. And the slogan for the party conference says together and the future. How are people expected to believe that you and Keir Starmer are together for the future when you can't even apparently agree on the present?
Well, we did agree. You know, we are in agreement.
Well, why did you feel the need to amend what he put forward to the NEC?
It was a tidying up of what was the same thing that we were both trying to achieve. So it wasn't we call them friendly amendments in the movement, is where you actually are just trying to tidy up the wording, because sometimes you want to put something in and that's your aim, but the unintended consequences sometimes have, you know, the ability to disenfranchise. And that was what we were doing, you know. That's what my concerns were, is that we continue to make sure that we have a broad, diverse group of candidates that come forward so that people can vote for that.
All right, one more piece of conference business. Chair of the conference, Margaret Beckett, when she opened yesterday, talked about civility. So did the General Secretary, David Evans, when he made his speech. You said last night, we cannot get any worse than a bunch of scum, homophobic, racist, misogynist, absolute pile of banana republic, Etonian piece of scum. Is that the kind of civility that the Starmer-Rayner Labour Party envisages?
Well, look, that was post-watershed, as we'd say, with a group of activists at an event last night. And what I was trying to get across, and this is and it is my passionate way in which I do it, is the anger and frustration that people feel when you have a Prime Minister who has said things and not apologised for them that are racist, that are misogynistic, that are homophobic, that has given billions of pounds of taxpayers' money to their mates and literally wasted that money at a time when they're cutting universal credit, plunging families into crisis and the cost of living is going up. Then my passion was about, look, we can't sit on the sidelines here. We have to get organised. And I was speaking to a group of activists to say, you've got to get that fire in your belly. The reason I was so upset about what the government did, especially on the school meals, was because I was a child that was hungry. And I was a child that needed that support. And I remember Tory ministers at the time when I was 16 saying women like me, girls like me at 16, were just getting pregnant to get council houses. So when the Prime Minister uses language like calling Muslim women letterboxers, that has an effect. And the fact that he hasn't apologised for that, then for me, I don't think he's fit to govern. And I was saying to a group of activists late at night, get your fire in your belly. We cannot sit on the sidelines anymore. We've got to get into power because we've got to make things better for ordinary working people in this country.
Look, we can all get carried away, but you talked about a bunch of them. You talked about Tories in general.
No, let me be clear. I'm talking about members of the cabinet. So you've got the Home Secretary who has bullied senior civil servants, who breached the ministerial code, had private meetings without civil servants present, and nothing's been done about that. We've had other cabinet members that have said appalling things. So I think this government...
We're being quite specific about who the scum are, or do you want to give me a list of names?
Well, I think anyone who leaves children hungry during a pandemic and can give billions of pounds to their mates on WhatsApp, I think that was pretty scummy. Now, that is a phrase, and let me contextualise it, it's a phrase that you would hear very often in northern working-class towns, that we'd even say it jovially to other people. You know, we say it's a scummy thing to do. And that, to me, is my street language, as you would say, about actually it's pretty appalling that people think that's OK to do.
Yeah, look, I'm not going to get into an argument about you. You pride yourself on being plain speaking, and that's all fine. But would you like to take this opportunity perhaps to apologise to the 14,000 people in Ashton-under-Lyne who voted for a Tory and the Tory scum that you describe, by suggesting, and now you're suggesting, that somehow their choice, they made a choice to be racist, homophobic and scummy?
Yeah, let me be clear. I am not saying that anyone who voted for the Conservatives are racist, scummy and homophobic. I'm saying the Prime Minister...
So do you just want to... Let's just deal with it. Why don't you apologise to those who voted Conservative in Ashton-under-Lyne? And by the way, the millions who voted Conservative in those red wall seats.
Sure, I'm saying, and I'm very clear, I'm not saying anybody who voted Conservative are those things. I'm saying the Prime Minister has said those things and has acted in that way. And if the Prime Minister wants to apologise and remove himself from those comments that he's made that are homophobic, that are racist, that are misogynistic, then I will apologise for calling him scummy.
Oh, come on.
No, I'm very serious.
Just deal with it. You could just deal with it very simply by saying, I'm sorry about this.
Honestly, I'm really serious about this because I feel really passionate about the fact that when you've got a Prime Minister of the country that thinks it's OK to use the language that he's used, then that is appalling.
He hasn't called you or Keir Starmer scum. Listen, you called him scum. Is that the civility that we're talking about now? Because
I've said that I'm very clear that if the Prime Minister wants to remove himself from those comments, I'm quite happy to apologise for calling him scum.
All right.
If he wants to remove himself from those comments, the racist, misogynistic, homophobic comments that he's made, they're all documented, very offensive comments, then I will apologise to him personally for calling him scum. If he wants to say that he apologises and doesn't mean the comments that he's made in the past, I'll happily do that. OK, I'm sure he's watching and he'll drop you a line. Let's talk about policy. You plan to legislate to compel employers and unions to talk to each other. What happens when the unions and the employers disagree? Well, they go through the disputes procedure. There is a formal process for them to do that. You know, it's well documented. But what this does actually, by having collective bargaining and having that negotiation, often they come to agreement because employers and trade unions have one common aim, and that's the business to flourish, because without the business, you don't have the membership and you don't have the workers. So what's new about this policy? Employers and trade unions talk all the time. Well, what's new about this policy? Of course, in those sectors where we have collective bargaining, and I talk about the social care sector, and many social care workers now do not have the mechanism for fair pay agreements, for example, and therefore I talk about how that undercuts their wages. 600,000 care workers are not paid the minimum wage. They don't get, you know, I talked about in my speech about how they don't get travel time. So I really want to increase the standards in care so that people who receive care get the best care. But it's great for business as well, because staff retention is a problem. We know we've got vacancies, skills that we lose when you have to skill people up again to do that job. Actually, it works better when you pay people better. I get all that, but you've christened this the New Deal for working people. Let me remind you, 2017, Labour manifesto said that Labour would repeal the Trade Union Act, roll out sector collective bargaining, raise the minimum wage to at least £10. The 2019 Labour manifesto said that you would roll out sectoral collective bargaining across the country, bringing workers and employers together to agree legal minimum standards on a wide range of issues that every employer
would have to adopt. What exactly is new about the New Deal for working people?
Well, Trevor, I'm consistent, if nothing else, to be fair. And then on top of that, there's a suite of other things that we announced. So we've done a lot of detailed work on this. The Green Paper that I produced yesterday, published, has things like, rights from day one for all workers, talking about a single status for workers, so that we have the parental leave, that we have rights for unfair dismissal from day one, and that people can get that support. I talked about flexible working. People during the pandemic have worked more flexibly than ever before, home working and other ways of working, and I think we should roll that out and have an opportunity for people to have more flexibility, and employers will benefit from that in terms of all the different sectors that we have across the whole of the economy.
Yeah, look, you're essentially recycling a policy. OK, you can call it new if you like. This morning, the leader has said that he effectively wants to remove the tax advantages that private schools have. This sort of feels a bit like warmed-up Corbynism of 2017 and 2019. What is different about the Keir Starmer, Angela Rayner leadership from what was offered in 2019?
Well, some of our values stay the same, Trevor, throughout. That's the Labour Party. That's what we've always been. We've always been a party of social justice and about tackling inequality. Inequality in the UK has grown under the Conservatives. What we're saying is that it's about priorities. We shouldn't be subsidising private education when you've got so many young people now who haven't got those opportunities. That what we're saying is that money should go back into supporting young people who need that support. And it's about priorities, and it's about showing the difference between what a Conservative government does, like that on the issue of the tax hike, on the issue of universal credit, and what we would do completely different. And our values are about tackling inequality, not just saying it, but tackling it.
Let's deal with the issue, difference between talking the talk and walking the walk. Is it embarrassing that of the four biggest parties in Parliament now, the Labour Party is the only one that's never had a woman leader?
Well, I did an interview recently at the weekend and described Keir as a feminist, and he is. And
But he's not a woman, as far as I know.
He's not a woman, no. But it's about how you bring people forward and about people putting their names forward. I hope we'll have a female leader one day. I'm absolutely committed to that, supporting somebody going forward or taking that issue forward. But Keir has been very strong on supporting women, and I can only say as his deputy that the first conversation I had with Keir, which was a very serious one, because if you remember, Boris Johnson was very poorly at the time, and I had COVID. And Keir's first conversation with me when we were elected leader and deputy was, Angela, if I get COVID, if something happens to me, I need to put the mechanisms in place for you to be able to take over. That is a sign of respect for my role and my status in the organisation. So I think it's important that, and it's an important point here, men can be feminists and support women in their career choices and support them, whether in the workplace, as yourself and others, or actually by supporting them soft or hard in terms of how they can bring them forward. But that's an important role for men as well as women putting themselves forward as well.
Let's just deal very quickly, if we may, and last question, in supporting women. How can women in Britain trust Labour to support women when Labour cannot even guarantee the safety and gain the confidence of its own woman MPs? Rosie Duffield is not here because she does not feel safe.
Yeah, and that is a concern of mine, that Rosie didn't feel safe to attend conference. But let me say something about Trevor, because it's really serious and it crosses all political parties. What I have been shocked by, especially my female colleagues, and that's Conservative female MPs as well, is the level of misogynistic abuse they get. I've had death threats, so many of them. I thought it was just because I'd become deputy leader of the Labour Party that it upped on a scale, nothing. But speaking to colleagues across the House, the level of abuse, is disgusting, and it has to stop. And Lindsay Hoyle, the Speaker of the House, spoke about this as well. He made it a big key issue at his G7 meeting. We need to make sure that our politics means that we can have the discourse that I have with Boris and others, that's right, but abuse at that level is completely unacceptable, and Rosie deserves our full support and protection against that, and she would get that if she'd have come to conference. We would have risk assessed and made sure that she had every bit of support that she needed to be here. And anybody who abuses Rosie Duffield, who is a member of the Labour Party, would go through our formal complaints procedure, and I'd expect a robust response on it.
Angela Rayner, thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.